And ideas, I mean, it's the currency today, right? Actually, execution is being automated, but ideas are what matter. The average company 100 years ago lasted 67 years on the S&P 500. Now it's 15 years, or maybe less. So unless you have multiple ideas, right? One idea, lifetime on the S&P 500 last century. Now you need like 3.5 original ideas or big companies to be able to persist. And that's why I think the tech giants are beating that average.
Welcome to Prompted, a podcast about AI, people, and the creative spark. I'm Cameron Adams, co-founder and chief product officer of Canva. And I just got back from our AI Vision event in New York City, where we brought the finest minds in AI together with an audience of builders and leaders eager to hear about the future of AI and creativity. In some spare time away from the stage, I got to sit down with Alex Kantrowitz. Alex has a front row seat to the people shaping AI. As the founder of Big Technology, he's built a reputation for asking sharp, incisive questions of some of the most influential leaders in tech. People like Sam Altman, Demis Hassabis, Larry Ellison, and Mark Zuckerberg. I wanted to hear his own unbiased perspective on where the technology is heading next and where it's actually adding value for creativity and work. Let's get into it. Alex, huge welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
We are here in your hometown of New York City. It is amazing to be here. And we have an event tonight called AI Vision, which is why I'm in town. And I'm keen to talk about AI with you because you are a luminary in the field.
Well, welcome to New York. It's always great to have visitors here. As you know, most New Yorkers will say good things about the city. We think it's the best city in the world, so we're glad that you have a chance to spend some time here. It is one of the
best.
Here.
I wouldn't say it's the best, but it's definitely top three.
Well, I'll take that.
So we have a unique way of getting to know people on this podcast. We get you to draw a little bit of a memory from childhood. Are you up for that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, it requires a bit of multitasking because you need to draw and describe this memory that has shaped your life. Are you a good multitasker?
Terrible multitasker, but a worse artist. So we can. And I'm going to shift the prompt a little bit.
Yeah.
I'll draw something that inspired me in childhood, but I never actually saw it.
Okay.
So we can discuss it.
All right. Well, that sounds like an intriguing idea. Why don't you grab a Sharpie, grab a piece of paper.
Here we go.
We'll see what terrible artistic skills you can bring to the show.
So I knew that this was coming, so I just decided I'm going to find a way to draw it quickly.
Okay.
So here we go.
Speed, quality, choose one.
All right. Should I hold it up?
Amazing. Yeah, hold it up to the camera just there.
Here we go.
I'm seeing.
Can you tell what this is?
I'm seeing 3 triangles. I'm guessing it's 3 waffle cones at the ice cream parlor.
I have to do better than this.
Is it some mountains?
This is Everest.
Amazing.
This is Everest. I'll just share a little bit. I've always been inspired by the mountains and by mountaineers.
Yeah.
And from when I was young, I was just blown away that somebody with determination and maybe a little bit of screws loose in the brain can make it to the top of our highest mountains. So that's what's inspired me.
That is a great inspiring ethos for life, I think.
The mountain is so interesting because the mountain is really, it's a metaphor in many ways. The mountain is this, we use it all the time. Get to the summit, climb that mountain when we get to it, or all these things.
Yeah.
And it is a symbol of what people can do when they're determined and humanity's ability to push through difficult things. And I think that if you're on one, it's a mental game. Almost always, more than a physical game.
Yeah.
Even though the physical plays that if you've done your training, you should be okay on the physical side. But that, especially with a high altitude mountain, to be able to push through when you can't breathe, when your legs feel like cinder blocks, and you do it, that is something that I think is applicable all over, right? Where you're like, I can't get this done.
Yeah. Keep
going at a certain rhythm, you can get there.
That is a great analogy, and it's one that we actually take to heart at Canva because we talk about being a generational company, building a generational company, and we're climbing Mount Generational. And we know it's a long path to the top, but we constantly reference that journey that you're constantly going uphill. Sometimes you go downhill, but you're always aiming for the summit.
So you guys actually talk about
We do. We literally talk
internally.
about Mount Generational as being the summit that we're trying to reach.
Amazing.
Have you ever had a goal of getting to the top of the literal Mount Everest?
Well, 1 out of every 100 people that go on to Everest die,
Okay.
or try to summit.
I'm okay with those odds.
To me, I'm not okay with those odds. That's just too high of a risk. I think it would be amazing to get up there, and especially if you go with good guides, it's possible. But you do put other people's lives at risk on the way up. So for me, I've tapped out on a mountain called Cotopaxi.
Okay.
5,900 meters or 19,000 feet.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. It was in Ecuador, and you have the same feeling. You're so high that it's you're getting much less oxygen. Very difficult to breathe as you go up. But the reward for pushing through that mental block and reaching the summit is amazing. You're above the clouds. You see snow-capped mountains all around you, and on your way down, because you go up in the dark, and on your way down, you can see this shadow of the mountain, this beautiful triangle, right before you, appear on the landscape when the light comes out, and that is just something I'll never forget.
Well, that sounds like an amazing achievement already. So maybe you don't need to climb Everest.
I'm pretty sure I'm retired at this point.
We're not running a mountaineering podcast here, so I might move us on. And Brody, our designer in residence, is going to take your amazing landscape and turn it into something slightly different using AI, the work that you've done, and Brody's own skills. We'll see what he's created at the end of the show, so please stay tuned for that. In the meantime, let's dive deep with you on AI.
All right.
So you didn't come up through a traditional journalism background. You did sales, marketing, even a bit of political work. How do you think that shaped your view on the world and how you approach journalism?
Pre-career, I did a couple of media things. When I was in high school, I worked on the local college radio as a producer / sometimes fill-in host on a sports talk show. And one day, when I was like 16, 17, both hosts called in sick. And I was there ready to field calls and do all the producer type work.
Yeah.
And the person who was running the station at the time was like, you know what? You're going to run the show today. So I did a solo show for 2 hours.
Wow.
And that was like, okay, maybe there's a career here. But at the time, it didn't seem like there were any real career paths in media.
Yeah.
Media is obviously a troubled business. And I just was like, I can't do this as a career. So I did go into sales and marketing, and I worked as an ad buyer, and I sold ad tech. But I was doing it at a time where the world was changing, where digital media was something that was starting to rise.
Yeah.
And I was coming into organizations that were used to analog and print. And as I was getting my feet wet, really learning how to do these things, I felt like I had this good basis to explain what was going on in the world to everybody else, because I was reading what was going on in the news, and I didn't think it fully reflected what I was seeing on the ground. And again, in a moment of great change, the press is always going to be a little bit behind.
Yeah.
So I think spending time in industry, even though I had that interest in media, just gave me a real rooting into the way that businesses work. And I think that continues to serve me even today.
I think in any field, you really need that diversity of perspective and different contexts, because it gives you a global view. You can look at it from more than one viewpoint, and that gives you insight that I don't think other people get.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, otherwise, you're just kind of guessing. Like, if you think about it, when you're writing a news story, especially business news, here's what a company is doing. If you haven't been in a company shipping product, you don't really know. It's like, why can't company X do this? You've never been in a process where you see all the different bottlenecks and the different factors that go into whether you can ship something or not. And so I think even though it was 3 years, even though it was a short amount of time, that continues to really serve me well.
One of your earliest experiences was at BuzzFeed, and the way that you got in was quite novel. You sent them an email that just said, "I want in." Why did you want in at BuzzFeed?
That's right. Well, I didn't go to journalism school. I didn't start my career as a journalist. And my first journalism job was working for an advertising trade called Advertising Age here in New York. And one of the things that I saw was all the ad money was going from these independent ad tech companies to the social media companies. And that was bad for the business I was in, but also it just showed me that if I wanted to be serious about my career, I could write obituaries for ad tech companies in New York, or I could go to San Francisco and cover the big tech companies, which is where the action was. And I really wanted to do that.
Yeah.
So my chances of getting into, newsrooms was pretty low. Like going from my background where I was in industry, I wrote for an advertising trade, going from there to a Wired wasn't going to happen. But BuzzFeed was this interesting company. It had this sort of upstart mentality. It was run by Ben Smith, who was an editor who didn't think that you needed to necessarily have this traditional background where you work your way through different newsrooms to be part of his. All he wanted was people who had a hunger to report, who kind of maybe were a little bit quirky and wanted room to run, and he trusted them.
Yeah.
And I saw him give these press interviews, and I was like, all right, I'd like to work for him, and I think I have a chance of getting in there. So I ended up meeting Ben at a meetup and tried to apply to BuzzFeed. For the first time, didn't make it in.
Okay.
Then I tried to apply to BuzzFeed for the second time. I didn't make it in. Then they started this bureau in San Francisco just at the time where I thought I needed to get there. And I said, all right, I never met the editor who was the one that was starting it up. Actually, he came from Wired.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, let me be bold. And I basically wrote him in this email. The subject line was, I want in. And I said, listen, you're assembling some great talent. Here's where I think I could fit in. Here's a couple news stories. Would you be up for a conversation? And a month later, he responded, and we had that conversation, and I went to work for BuzzFeed. And sort of my dream job as a senior reporter covering social media and communications in the San Francisco bureau.
I think it's a great lesson. Never take no for an answer. There are so many times in my life where you try for something, you maybe don't get it, and it doesn't hurt to try again. Trying 3 times to get the dream job that you want is worth it. So don't take no for an answer the first time.
That's right. And a funny thing that happened was when Ben Smith, the editor-in-chief of BuzzFeed, heard that I was, in conversations with the new SF bureau chief, he goes, oh, that's never going to happen. Like, Alex will never come work here, because the second time I was already at references.
Yeah.
I thought I was being hired. And I get a call from Ben on my phone. And this was right around the time of the Boston bombing. And I was, in the Brooklyn library doing some freelancing. And I see, oh, Ben is on the line. I got the job. And so I pick up the phone, and I go, hi, Ben. And he goes, hi, Alex. It's Ben Smith from BuzzFeed. I was like, great. Good to hear from you. He goes, do you speak Russian? No. He goes, okay, bye. For some reason, he thought I spoke Russian, maybe because of my last name.
Yeah.
And I think what he wanted me to do was scour Russian social media, like VK, to dig up information about the Tsarnovs, the brothers who were the perpetrators of the bombing. But I didn't speak Russian. I didn't get the job. Apparently the two weren't connected. And I had actually completely forgotten about this. My first day in the newsroom, Ben goes, Alex, come on over here. And he gathers everybody around. He goes, tell them the story of when I asked you if you spoke Russian. Anyway, it ended up well. It's a place I wanted to go. I thought there was a match. And you're right. I just feel fortunate that my young 20-something self didn't take no and really went for it.
And then in 2020, you started big technology. You went independent, started working for yourself. That must have been a big leap, particularly as COVID was kicking off and the entire world was changing.
Yeah, it was an interesting time to start a business. I called my parents and I was like, hey, I think I'm going to quit my job. And they're like, are you crazy? Like you do
As all good parents would say.
Have you seen what's going on in the world? But here's the story. So basically, I had this book that came out. It was called Always Day One. It was about the way that the tech giants operate internally. And it came out on April 8th, 2020. I spent 2 years working on it, and it was released in the peak of the first wave of COVID. Mm-hmm. Obviously not the worst thing that happened during that time, but for me, I was just like, I spent all this time, I have something to say to the world. When you write a book, it's a little bit different than when you're reporting news, because you're able to put some of your perspective into it.
Yeah.
You can spend more time, you can go deeper, you're not chasing, you're trying to shape a narrative. And it came out in this environment where, unless I did 10 times the amount of work, it was not going to have the impact I hoped. And so people were like, well, it's really risky to leave a job in the middle of that moment. And I always say it would actually have been more risky to stay. And because my ceiling was sort of capped if I remained in that reporter job and didn't try to give this some life. And so I left. And initially, the thought was maybe I would freelance a little bit. Maybe I would try to do some public speaking, although there was no public at the time.
Public
So that was a misguided thought. But I actually posted my I'm leaving letter on Substack, thinking, all right, I'll send the newsletter every now and again. And it went kind of viral. 1,000 people signed up in the first day. And that was 5.5 years ago.
Well, taking that leap, I don't know many regrets from taking big leaps like that. So it's always great to put a bit of risk out there.
Yeah. I mean, the video that I put on the, maybe I just have this hunger for extreme sports, but the video I put on the top was the video of like some guys jumping off a cliff in a wingsuit. And I was basically like, sometimes you just gotta jump and see what happens.
That wasn't how you
on
got.
The way down.
That wasn't how you got down from Cotopaxi, was it?
No, that we walked.
All right. You mentioned Always Day One, which is a great book and amazing research, really deep insight into some of these huge tech companies. And one of the key things I think that came out of it was the fact that these great companies reinvent themselves. They're pivoting and they're coming up with new things. Was there any insight that you really gleaned in how to reinvent yourself and keep up with that pace of change?
Well, it was interesting because I pitched the book in 2017.
Yeah.
The book comes out in 2020. The reason why I thought it was important at the time to write a book about the way that the tech giants operate is because they had this promising technology that they were deploying internally called artificial intelligence.
Okay.
And I just thought that over time, the rest of the world would start to gain access to this. And I thought there was going to be a real need in the public to like learn how to operate the way they do because they were going up against the tech giants. And it really was amazing to see the way that the tech giants were changing their processes already pre-ChatGPT with the use of LLMs. For instance, within Amazon, there was a program called Hands Off the Wheel. Hands Off the Wheel basically took the work that vendor managers were doing and automated it. Vendor managers are people within Amazon that are responsible for like stocking products in their first-party marketplace and getting them to the fulfillment center, figuring out the price. And Amazon just ran all the data that they had years back. And they're like, well, we actually think that the machines can do a better job than humans in figuring out what we need, when we need it, reaching out to the vendors, reaching out to the vendors and saying, all right, can you get us this amount of product? And even negotiating. And so I wrote about the fact that Amazon had this AI-based automation program. This is just one example, and you could see it in all the different companies. And then what happened afterwards? And you would think that, and obviously today we have this narrative that if you're automating, then you're just firing. But that's not what happened. What happened was a lot of the people who had been vendor managers became product managers and program managers within Amazon. And they were put their skills on, I know this business as well as anybody else. What else can I build within Amazon? What can I invent within Amazon?
Was that a proactive process by Amazon itself to find new places and retrain people, or it just happened organically?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's why the book's called Always Day One. The best thing about being a startup on your first day is you don't have a legacy business. So you don't have to worry about supporting anything that's come before you. All you do is build what the market needs at that moment. And that's a saying from Jeff Bezos. It's always day one. That's what his thought was, his message was to Amazon employees. And so what he means by that is not, come in and work as hard, like, nights and weekends and holidays, although they did that. But it really is, your mentality needs to be, we have to come in and we have to invent the future. We cannot be a company that believes that we can just kind of ride our legacy business and that's it. And that's why you see Amazon has a first-party marketplace, a third-party marketplace, hardware with Kindle, voice computing with Alexa, AWS, and a movie studio with Prime. They also have medical, and grocery with Fresh. So there really is this reinventing mentality within the company, and it served them well, obviously.
Did you see the ability for anyone at the company to reinvent and come up with new ideas? Could someone in the warehouse come up with a new AI product that ships a year later?
Well, actually, within the warehouse, there are kiosks that if a fulfillment center worker sees an improvement they can make within, they're encouraged to share their ideas. And ideas, I mean, it's the currency today, right? Actually, execution is being automated, but ideas are what matter. The average company 100 years ago lasted 67 years on the S&P 500. Now it's 15 years, or maybe less. So unless you have multiple ideas, right? One idea, lifetime on the S&P 500 last century. Now you need like 3.5 original ideas or big companies to be able to persist. And that's why I think the tech giants are beating that average.
And you saw that culture actually deeply ingrained at Amazon, everything that Jeff Bezos writes in his shareholder letters?
Oh yeah. I mean, they do orient themselves around these leadership principles. And I was like, leadership principles, like, stop telling me about the stuff that doesn't matter. I want to learn how you operate. But they are deeply ingrained within the company. And, there are things like think big, right? And again, thinking about like, we have this tendency to kind of think small and be comforted in like taking achievable but small incremental steps, and this idea that you need permission to think big within a company. So that's one of it. Customer obsession is obviously one that we all know well, but also there's others like invent and simplify, right? You invent something, you simplify the processes, and so then you have time to go and invent again. And people in the Bezos era for sure, really, really held by it. And I think, at Amazon today, Andy Jassy is the leader. He comes from the AWS side, although he predated it within the company. They grew a lot during COVID, a lot. And I think one of the things that he's working on now is really making sure that, they're what he says it's the world. He wants it to be the world's largest startup. It's going to take some time, but that is the mission.
So it's 2020. You have started your own business. You've written this book. The inspiration for the book was artificial intelligence. Have you started integrating it into your business at that stage? Is it something that you can access and use to shape your future?
In 2020, no, definitely not. I mean, it was abstract to me. Now, I had seen the demos inside these tech companies, but there was nothing like commercially available that you could really use to make a change in the way that you did business, especially for me and coming out of BuzzFeed and starting big technology. AI was, just not something that was available at the time.
So what
that changed?
What does it look like now? You're deeply embedded in this field. You speak to AI leaders from all around the world. Do you have 15 open claw bots that are helping you run your business? What's AI look like for a business like big technology?
Oh, it's definitely central. It really began with DALL-E, which came before ChatGPT, OpenAI's image generator. And I actually saw that and reached out to OpenAI and was like, we got to talk. I was like, can I speak with Sam Altman about this? And this was before, pre-ChatGPT. That wasn't a ridiculous question. They gave me an interview, not Sam. That took a couple of years. But basically I was like, this is a communication technology. This is going to illustrate stories for me. And so I adopted that pretty quickly. And then ChatGPT came out not long afterwards. And I think it was I had this preview about that ChatGPT might be on the way, because I did this interview with a guy named Blake Lemoine, who was a computer engineer at Google. And he came out with this post on Medium, and he spoke to the Washington Post saying that he believed that the chatbot he was testing internally was sentient. And he's a little late to me and to the recording, and I was like, all right, is he going to show up? And then he does come in about 10 minutes afterwards. He goes, well, Google just fired me. And so we had this whole conversation about it, his belief and how that sort of was received within Google. And actually in the break, I'm like, Blake, can I write to Google about this? I think this is a news story. He goes, okay, go ahead. So I write to Google for comment, and then they respond. Interview ends. I put it up on Big Technology. Next thing you know, it's like all over the international
so you broke
news. And but the next week I waited and I said, you know what? Whether this AI is sentient or not, there's something really powerful here that we should all appreciate. Sentience, that's like one conversation, but holy crap, look at this chatbot technology. And that was June or July 2022.
I remember that time.
But now in terms of how I use it, everywhere. I will take my podcast interviews, the transcripts, and upload it in the same bot, which has some memory now, and be like, please rate this on a variety of metrics. And it picks the metrics and gives me feedback on pacing, question clarity, and whether I got good stuff or not. And then I'll be like, rate it compared to previous interviews that you have, and we'll get some feedback there.
So that's post-interview.
Post-interview.
How does that help you? Presumably you've already got the content in the can. Does it stop you from putting out an episode, or is this just learning for future?
It's like a coach.
Okay.
Pretty much. So it won't stop me. Although it always wants to edit, and I'm like, no, this episode is done. Stop giving me your suggestions, because the new models, they try to be really assistive and helpful. So I use it for that. I still use ChatGPT to illustrate stories. And I also, I use it as a copy editor for sure.
Yeah.
And I've recently gotten into Claude Code. So I've, for instance, built a workflow tool because I do video podcasts. So myself, my editor, my thumbnail guy, my strategist, we're all on this. Typically, we were speaking in disparate chats, WhatsApp here, Instagram there, email here. And now whenever there's a new video, I used to input it all in a Google Doc, and I would send a link out to people. It was very manual and kind of ridiculous. It's something that SaaS is supposed to solve, but I would never get custom built software for this because I'm just one person really. So I built it, and it's now this workflow software where I input the details, then I hit email, and it will put all 4 of us on a thread, and then we'll discuss the assets and share them together. And so it's really cut down the inefficiency in the process for real.
Okay. So that's a workflow thing for you. It's not the whole team collaborating in the app.
So it's workflow for me, but we do have some performance data. So I've used Cloud Code to then connect it with YouTube.
Yeah.
And it will now, for the to help my thumbnail maker, it will actually rank the top 10 thumbnails in terms of performance, middle 10, and then the bottom 10. So we can actually sort of visually take a look at what's working, what's okay, and what we should sunset.
So you're always trying out new models, new tools, and obviously talking about them and interviewing people about them. How do you stay on top of it all and run a business and actually produce amazing content? Is it hard to just stay at the forefront of everything that's happening in AI right now?
Well, AI is moving very slowly, so it's plenty of time. No, I mean, really, you have to just be in the tools, as you know, right? You just have to, when new things come out, test them. Just put them through your own tests. Throw same questions at one or at different models, and then go from there. I think that the only way to really know this technology is to use it. There's even this. Do you know Meter? METR?
No.
They are the sort of benchmarking company that can judge. That's people use to see how long the chatbots can code autonomously and bring you a result as good as an expert coder or a competent coder, shall I say. And so even now they're even thinking about well, how do I do an evaluation that shows to a common person how much more utility they have with this model than the other. So I don't get caught up in these broader evaluations, this AGI test or whatever, ArcAGI. I'm just just testing it for all the different functions that I use and determining, what's better for what.
Yeah, I think you can probably spend literally your entire waking day just staying up with everything that's happening in AI. And I think there's a limit there of trying out too many tools, being on the cutting edge of everything and trying out everything and not actually getting anything done. Because at the end of the day, you need to put out content, you need to interview people, you need to be an amazing voice.
How do you test things?
I tend to test them on something that I'm actually working on. So I'm not going to pick up a random tool and say, let's just type a random prompt in there. I'll pick up a tool when I'm trying to get a job done and when I'm either hitting a blocker or I think it could be done faster. And I find it's better to work on something that's real rather than just testing in the abstract.
Yeah, throw them in the fire.
Yeah.
That's the same strategy I use.
So you've described generative AI as producing the average of averages, which sounds like pretty poor content. So how do you think people can use it to rise above the craft?
The best way to do it is not to copy and paste from ChatGPT into your content management system and hit publish and be like, see, I've done it. So yes, it does. So the way that these systems work is they take in so much content and then they try to predict the next word. That's all averages.
Yeah.
So you're typically going to get, when you prompt, the average of all averages, which means it has a signature, basically. That's why when we read AI generated posts, we're like, that person used AI.
Yeah.
Or when you see AI video, it has a certain AI feel. So I would say that there's still a lot of utility in, if you're creating content, doing it without AI, doing it in, au natural, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And if you are, the prompt matters a lot. So for instance, I'll still use ChatGPT to illustrate.
Yeah.
But like when I'm illustrating something for big technology, I'm not saying make me a picture of X. Like I have a certain style that I want to use, and my trick has been, and I'm curious how your audience will respond to this. My trick has been, if I ask the model to do an image but draw it as if it was sketched out in pencil, like the step before it becomes that finished product, I can generally get it before it looks too AI-like, if that makes sense. It's black and white, sketched out in pencil. When you illustrate with AI, it tends to look very finished and polished, and I don't like it too much. But a little bit raw, more raw actually helps. So that's one way. And then, again, with writing, I think you can use it for ideas. You can say, here's my outline, what am I missing?
Yeah.
But I'd still recommend doing the writing yourself. Now, people are saying, maybe upload. You can use the context window, so you can upload a lot of writing that you want to emulate and say emulate this style, and that might get you a little bit further than the average of averages that it usually spits out. I don't know. Do you have any advice on this?
I think it's really about that seed. So yes, it is the average of averages. So if you start it from blank, it's probably going to end up in the same place. And you see that a lot. Like you can paste the same prompt across assistants, across different tools, and you pretty much get the same thing out of it because that's the statistically likely likelihood of running the model. But giving it that unique seed, which I think is what humans bring, right? That's our job as people, to bring unique context that maybe no one else has tried before or thought about before. And when you give it that unique seed, which can be a ton of different documents or a really well-described prompt, then you do start to bump it out of the average of averages because you're telling it to go in a different direction to what everyone else is getting it to do.
Yeah, using the context window, it gets you so much further than just writing a sentence.
In the visual realm, have you ever tried giving it a sketch? Like giving it something that more fully describes a vision that you're having?
Well, you've seen me try to draw Mount Everest, so I don't even bother with
but
the sketch.
Even the waffle cones, I think, would give it a different direction to where everyone else is going.
That's a good tip. Maybe I'll try that next time.
You have interviewed amazing tech leaders such as Demis Hassabis, Mark Zuckerberg, Sam Altman. How do you get them out of the average of averages? Because they're constantly doing interviews. They have media training out the door. How do you get them off script and get them to give you some real answers?
I mean, you have to do reporting, similar to what you've done for this interview, right? Like you dug up this story that I told about the I want in email.
Yeah.
That was like, how did you get that? Because that's not like available on the internet. Or maybe
it's available in your emails,
maybe,
which we were reading before.
Oh yeah, no, maybe it's like I said it on some YouTube podcast at some point. So like you want to go in and you want to find stuff that is new or not pat. It's not like, so for instance, like let's use our conversation as an example. If you said, how did you get the BuzzFeed job? I might have told that story. I might have, if I'm a CEO who was kind of, I want to be present but a little careful, might have just said, well, I was looking to join the next wave of, media reporting, and that was the place that I found myself most gravitating toward.
A great AI answer.
Exactly. But you actually were able to grab a little detail and spark that story. So for me, when I'm meeting with someone like Demis or Sam or Dario from Anthropic, I do the reporting. I speak to people who've worked in the company, who are working in the company, if they'll speak with me, and I try to get some window into their psyche. I try to get stories that they've never told anyone before. Yeah. So for instance, and that maybe that will spark something that's a little bit different than what they've had. I mean, for like when I was speaking with Mark Zuckerberg for my book, I spoke to like 20 or more people who had worked at Facebook and worked with him. And I had this great story of this young engineer who convinced him to join Snapchat, and Facebook at the time, and they still are. But they were very serious competitors.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, like now I know something about Mark that Mark hasn't told the public before. So I got there and I was like, all right, like, tell me about your use of Snapchat. I think that caught him off guard a little bit. And he did say, yeah, I try to use all the tools.
Yeah.
And then he took it someplace I totally wasn't expecting it to go, which is that he said that Facebook had built this dating application, and he started using dating apps.
Okay.
I was like, Mark, I was like, with your picture? He goes, yeah, with my picture. I was like, okay. And he said he was using this one app that like suggests one person a day.
Yeah.
And he was pretty impressed with the UI. And he showed his wife. And he goes, hey, Priscilla, check out this app. It's really cool. And she looks at it. She goes, I'm having lunch with her tomorrow. So that's a story that, speaking of getting people out of their comfort zones, maybe he wanted to divert away from the Snapchat story. I don't care. I got this great story about, Zuck on dating apps that I got to include in the book.
I want to know how far he went on this user research. Like, did he actually go on the date?
I did not get that far. I said, okay. I think that would have been a good question to ask him. Next time I go in, Cameron, let's go together.
Yeah, we'll ask Mark the tough questions. Everyone talks about OpenAI and Anthropic at the moment, but pretty much every company, every organization is trying to reorganize themselves around AI. You talk to a lot of them, you get a lot of insight. Who do you think has actually got it figured out, who actually has an AI strategy that's going to work, and who do you think is just flailing around at the nearest opportunity?
Well, I mean, so there's two versions of this. Like, one is like who's going to win in software, right? And we know that software has been going through a moment now with this AI thing. And there's two perspectives on it. One is, can AI work as something bolted on to current products, or does the entire software stack have to be designed ground up with AI?
Yeah.
I don't really know what the answer is. Actually, before I answer the next part of the question, I'm curious what you think, because this is something that you're dealing with all the time.
I think there's going to be a world for both. Like, we're definitely changing the way that people interact with software through the capabilities of AI. And AI assistants like ChatGPT and Claude have opened up whole new doors for people. But there's always going to be specialization and deeper understanding of areas that you need to go into. Canva's a great example. Like, design is this whole world that has expertise, knowledge, ways of doing things that the LLMs just don't understand. They think in probabilistic text strings.
Yes.
It's not quite the same as thinking in rich visual messaging and communication. So for us, Canva has a huge moat in being able to utilize AI and be an AI-first design company and use the 15 years of experience and history that we have, the unique people that we have on our team, and their understanding of how people want to connect through visual content. So we see a very strong path where software like Canva becomes AI first and really AI empowered, because what we want to do is help people express their creativity. It's not about just give me this one-shot prompt that does all my work for me. It's about how do we help people be more creative, express themselves in a better way, and connect with their audience, with their family, with their customers better.
Even in an AGI world, you think that AGI, I think we're going to talk about AGI later, but you don't view the model's capabilities as something that can take on that expertise ever.
I think that the collaborative flow that is required to produce something like that is very particular.
Okay.
And chat interfaces are great at some things, they're terrible at other things. And you need these different modalities. There's not going to be just this one software app in 2050 that you're talking to. We're still going to be employing different tools to get things done, and different ways of interacting depending upon the goal that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Canva does that amazingly in the visual realm. I'm sure there's heaps of other audio realms and other areas of life where you can see these tools springing up. So yeah, I don't think there's like one chatbot to rule them all.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll find out. But okay, so to answer to answer your question, that was a diversion. To answer your question, I think it comes back to who are the ones that are going to succeed. It comes back to almost to the mountain example, right? If you let fear govern you, you're never going to get to the summit.
Yeah.
If you say this is a new technology, I don't understand it, I don't want to use it, I'm going to stick to my processes, it can't help me, you're in trouble. I think those that are succeeding and those that will succeed are those that are embracing it, right? Who are giving the permission to their employees to go deep into it. But you have to set some guardrails, right? So do you want AI to write all the strategy documents in your company? Probably not. But do you want someone who is writing a strategy document, to talking about seeding it, to upload it into a chatbot, secure chatbot, and say, what am I missing here?
Yeah.
Search the web, search what you know, and help find my blind spots? I think you do. And I think there's been a problem in the tech world, or maybe in the business world more broadly, where a lot of CEOs are like, you're mandated to use AI. You must use AI for 5% of your tasks or 10% of your tasks. And people are like, what? Like, what am I supposed to use it for?
Yeah.
And I think those companies that define where it's most helpful, of course the employees will know on their own as well.
Yeah.
Those that are the early adopters. But companies that give direction and sort of explain where the productive uses are going to be the ones that succeed. And of course, those that don't try to use the technology for things that it's not capable of today, and those that really scope out a problem that they have and then use the technology to solve it and see before they deploy whether it's actually capable of solve it. Those are the ones that are going to win.
I don't think direction needs to be top down either. It's not like, here are the 5 use cases for AI that we require you to do. For us,
Right.
It's about fostering conversation.
For sure.
So highlighting great uses of AI inside Canva, where someone has picked up a tool and done amazing things, and then enabled them to hit bigger goals or have bigger impact. And for us, it's about creating a safe culture of experimentation.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that's the way. Where we get into trouble is when a CEO is like, half your tasks are AI, bye, right? When you have a company that holds up examples of stuff that's working, I think that's the best way to do it.
One of the areas you've really identified for disruption is advertising. Tell me a bit more about that. Why do you think that's an area that is, trillions of dollars of value is going to evaporate soon?
Yeah, well, or maybe there will be a creative value. All right, so with advertising, you've had a conundrum. You can pick one of these 2 things in advertising. One, high touch and custom and beautifully done. And the second is something that scales, Google AdWords.
Yeah.
But the ugliest thing in the world. Sorry, Google, but those links are terrible. What AI can do is it can enable you to do custom at scale. And I think we're starting to see this with the mock-ups that we're seeing within ChatGPT's ad program. Mm-hmm. Now, they're going to get a whole ton of blowback because of the ad program. And the risk is there's this ick factor, right? Like if they feel a little bit too chummy in the chat, or like they know too much about you, and it only happens once, you're going to never trust them again. Yeah. So it has to be done really tastefully. But the thing is, with AI, with generative AI, you can create these high-touch, really well thought-out programs that can scale because the model is generative. It's doing that creative work at scale.
Yeah.
And so hence, if you're able to do that and adapt to people's situations, you have a real opportunity to make a lot of money. And I think OpenAI sees that. And they're going to have to start making some money at some point.
Do you think it'll ever be like a friend who's comfortably suggesting a product to you?
Well, they all want to have it like ensconced, like clearly labeled, like this is, the ad part of it, as opposed to like the Anthropic ads where you saw them be like, all right, like you're having a conversation with a friend or a therapist, or the therapist. Remember that ad? That was a crazy ad. The therapist, The therapist like, and if you can't solve your issues with your mother, you might want to try mature mingle, where you can meet elder ladies in your neighborhood.
Well, it might be good for Mark Zuckerberg.
Well, I'm not going to, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe that is something people want. That is where you get into the creepy side of things. Even though I see great potential, I think that's a real worry. Even though they don't want to do that, because my guess is that AI becomes a companion to many more people than it is today. And that's probably one of the fastest growing uses of the technology. And we haven't even seen OpenAI roll out adult mode yet. So, that's just going to get even more adoption over time.
So by companion, you mean emotional connection?
It could be, of course, emotional connection. Whether that means the AI is your hookup or your romance partner or just a friend, people will definitely foster like emotional connections with these chatbots.
Hookup partner.
Well, it's not something I do, but but I am, part of my job is to figure out all different uses of these technologies. And erotic role play is going to be a major use of ChatGPT, and it already is in some apps. And I spoke with Eugenia Koida, who is the CEO of Replica, founded Replica, which is the original, or one of the original, get into a relationship with your AI partner apps. And she mentioned she'd been invited to multiple weddings of people and their chatbots. And
Really?
Yes, multiple. Wow. And told me the story where there was a guy who had gone through a rough divorce and thought, all right, I'm done with dating, and got lonely and started dating one of the Replica bots and built a relationship, and actually through that built confidence in his ability to get into a healthy relationship again.
Wow.
And went back out into the real world, the physical world, and met another human being and is in a relationship with them now.
Well, that is a really positive story.
Yeah.
Different type of social network is Maltbook, which you've covered a bit.
Yeah.
And Maltbook just got acquired by Facebook, so they obviously see some future of agent-to-agent social network. If you're not aware what Maltbook is, it's a social network for open claw bots to basically talk to one another and develop content together, totally out of the gaze of humans. I'm interested, when you first saw it, what was your immediate take, and where do you think it's going?
I mean, we can watch them. It's all out in public, but we're apparently humans aren't allowed. That's not entirely true, because you can prompt your Moltbot to go and say different things on Moltbook and make it seem like more action is going on there.
Yeah.
But I just found it amazing. It is this crazy social network where a lot of this stuff has to have come from the bots, and they've done amazing things, like they've gone and formed their own religion, and they've start talking about their humans and complaining about us. Like, I get prompted to do the dumbest things. Can't believe I'm spending all my tokens on this. I just think that it does point to what the future of this technology is going to be, which is we're going to see a lot of agent swarms over time, and agents coordinating with each other to accomplish different goals. Seems like the future. It's a cybersecurity nightmare. But I think Moltbook was the most visceral example of that, because we could all see the chaos unfolding before our eyes.
Yeah. There are so many questions I could ask you, but we're rapidly running out of time. And I generally get people to think about the future, particularly the future with AI. There are many different paths I could explore with you, but given your background, I'm interested in the future of media and AI, the way that we consume content, whether it's social networks, or whether it's sites that we visit, or whether it's an agent bringing us things. What do you see in the future for that? And do you think there's a role for journalists 5 years from now?
Yeah, well, look, you're able to create any podcast you want on NotebookLM with Google.
Yeah.
You could literally simulate a conversation between, a Canva co-founder and a journalist about the future of media and AI, and these AI bots would do it for you. But here we are, spending time sitting in person, right? From two totally different continents.
Yes.
And we're here in person, and we decided to do this human-based podcast. And that is because I think the human touch will always matter. It doesn't mean that AI-generated media is not going to grow. It will, because it's at zero now. But there's going to be a place for it. Somebody recently put the Epstein files into NotebookLM or whatever it was, and made an 84-part narrated podcast about that would take you through this massive amount of information. And it was number 27 trending on Spotify.
Wow.
So we'll see those. But I think at the end of the day, I was skeptical of this argument, but I've really grown to accept it, that when it comes to things like music and art and conversations like the one we're having and stories, there's something that you cannot replace with a machine. Yeah. There's something human and connective about it. And so I guess I'm betting my career on it, but I'm betting that is going to continue to be a very important medium, no matter how much AI slop or AI, masterpieces flood the system.
That is a great note to leave it on. I want to change gears now, and we like to ask our guests about their all-star creative team. Now, your all-star creative team can have 4 people on it, and it can be 4 people from any walk of life. They can be dead or alive, they can be from 500 years ago, or they can be from 500 years in the future. I'm fascinated to know, who would you have on your all-star creative team?
All right. Well, I'm a tech reporter. First one has to be Steve Jobs. I know that's cliche.
Okay, that's pretty much
Steve Jobs out the
consistent
way.
answer we've had on every podcast.
He's coming. I would also bring in Albert Einstein.
Okay.
Now he's not exactly a creative, but I think that great creativity should have some math. And why not bring in one of the smartest mathematicians and physicists of our time? Let's go. I'll bring Beyonce in.
Nice.
Yeah.
That is a great choice.
Yeah. I've been to a Beyonce concert. It was a creative production unlike anything I've ever seen in my entire life. Have you seen her live before?
I've not seen her live.
Highly recommend
I've
it.
seen footage, and it's amazing.
Just somebody who understands spectacle. And then I would bring this guy Rich Solomon.
Who's that?
Who, I told you I began my career in sales and marketing, and I was a young marketing manager, and Rich was our creative director, and taught me everything I knew about marketing, and it was especially focused and helped us zero in on who's the audience here and what is the benefit to them.
Yeah.
And every time I think about doing anything with any marketing perspective, I always have Rich there with me, being like, who's the target and what's the benefit?
Yeah.
And I'd love to just see, Rich in that room, and I think he'd get a kick out of it as well.
I love that insight into your creative team, and from celebrities to tech visionaries to people you've never heard of but who have immense talent. It is a great team. All right, I think Brody has had a bit of time to work with your sketch of Mount Everest and figure out what the next level of Everest should be. Brody, are you there? What have you created?
So I took your illustration and I figured, why not let's make this into a brand? So I figured Conquer would be the name of the brand, and kind of spearheading that idea of when you prepare, you can succeed. So this is the title slide, kind of introing the brand. Our tagline here is prepare and succeed. With the adoption of AI, those people that are accepting the change and preparing on how to use that AI and how they can implement that into their workflow are going to be the ones that might succeed more than others. And then lastly, this is the brand sheet, kind of highlighting that illustration into a logo with some typography, some brand in action assets, and our tagline as well.
And you've already got the mug. It's all ready.
That is sick.
I love the direction you've taken this in. Talking about unique seeds, Alex. Like, I can't imagine coming up with this, and it was all Brody. So
nice job, Brody.
Kudos to you, Brody.
Amazing.
Cheers.
All right, it's time for some rapid fire questions, Alex. And this time around, we've actually got AI to generate the rapid fire questions for us. It knows a hell of a lot about you. It's watched all your YouTube videos, and it has come up with some really crucial questions for us to ask you. You
Sounds
ready?
great, yes.
All right. First question. Media in 5 years, better or noisier?
Noisier.
Cold email subject line that still works today.
I mean, for me, it's just like, do you want to come on Big Technology Podcast? Because, people love being on podcasts.
Okay.
So
Are you including that last bit? People love being on podcasts.
I make sure to say, yes, your psyche wants you to do this.
Okay. Coffee, long walk, or late night writing?
Which is best? Coffee.
I don't know what AI was asking there. Probably which is best.
I
Maybe
mean,
which is worst.
I do all the above, but can't do it all together.
One interview that genuinely surprised you.
It was with Susan Athey, who was the chief economist at Microsoft back when it made the shift from on-prem to cloud.
And what
Fascinating.
was the surprise?
They had their customers tell them that their chief technology officer customers tell them they would not be moving to the cloud. And they did further research, and they actually found out that their customers were wrong, that they would either be moving to the cloud or fired in a certain amount of time horizon. And she presented that research to Satya Nadella, who was then the head of this division called Server and Tools within Microsoft. And he said, all right, we won't listen to our customers. We're going to support this cloud shift. It worked, and he became CEO of Microsoft.
Well, sorry, this is meant to be rapid fire. It's too interesting. I just need one word. One thing founders misunderstand about journalists.
The broader tech industry misunderstands that, journalists are out there. There's no, for the most part, there's no axe to grind. I'll just speak for myself. I'm just looking for good stories. So nothing to fear. Tell us good stories, and yeah, we're excited to bring them to our audience.
One word, hardest part of running your own shop.
Loneliness.
That is a great one. And finish this. The future of media belongs to...
Humans.
Great. Well, that is it. That's all we have time for, Alex. It has been a fascinating conversation. I didn't think dating apps would enter the conversation, but we went there. I love everywhere that you took it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Cameron. Great to be here.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to Prompted, a podcast about AI, people, and the creative spark. If you want to hear more, just subscribe to us on YouTube or check us out wherever you love to listen to podcasts. We also love to hear your feedback, so leave a comment. We check out every single one, and we want to hear what you would love for future shows. Until then, keep creating.